What is up, and welcome into episode 44 of the Star Wars Newsnet Timeline Show. Luke, we have entered into our post-Kevin Scott interview era. We're back on our grind here with the High Republic. We'll be talking about Race to Crashpoint Tower today, which is the introduction to the great Jamaram. I don't know how to pronounce it exactly. I feel like with some of these Star Wars names, we just kind of go with it and hope we land in a decent landing zone. And that's where we are today. Some more Lula, some more Zine. We get some Ty York in this story, but really, this is all about our boy Ram, the little mechanic Jedi himself. Are you ready to talk about good old Jamaram on this timeline 44 Eve day time slot now?
You know what? I am indeed. Ram, he's a real cool guy. I think we often maybe talk, we've talked a lot about with Young Jedi Adventures who we think our Padawans would be. Should we be Jedi
Right.
Masters? I feel like both of us would love to have Ram. I think I'd love to have Ram. I was going to say, I do lean more toward, I think I'd vibe with the guy. I don't know if you would actually love him. I think he's a great guy. He'd be a great Padawan for anyone. But I see myself like really connecting with the guy. I really like Ram a lot.
He's a good guy. He's a good guy. What are we going to talk about? What are Ram and I going to talk about? I don't work with cars, mechanics, droids. I would never be a mechanic Jedi. I do not necessarily vibe with Ram and how he sees everything to the Force, see the whole for the whole. Each part has its place, all that kind of stuff. Like, that's not how I roll. I need more of the jump into action sort of, Padawan. But maybe, this could be a Qui-Gon Obi-Wan situation where I am the exact opposite of my Padawan, but we find a way to make it work. Like, maybe that is. But I do have a soft spot in my heart for Ram as an outside reader looking into the High Republic era.
That's all we need. That's all we need.
Fair enough. So, man, this is interesting interesting after the live show on Thursday when we had so many bombs drop this week. Just be back doing a little chill timeline show. But this is what we need. This is the stories that matter.
It's nice to chill out here. Yeah, exactly. I love this space that we have for the timeline show where it's just like we don't really dive into news. We're just here to enjoy the stories that exist in this universe. And you and I do a really good job of enjoying Star Wars stories. So it's a lot of fun to do these, really.
So I'm going to go out here and say right now, give us a follow on Apple and Spotify, just in case the video ends up being a little choppy. For whatever reason, it's fine on Luke's end, but not fine on my end. But I don't know how it's going to end up turning out. We're going to put it out anyway. I don't care. But in case you want to give us, go ahead and go get the listen in. It'll be there on Apple and Spotify at Star Wars Newsnet, just in case the video doesn't turn out the way we want. We want to make sure we get this episode out at a decent hour. You're a root beer drinker?
Yes, indeed, sir.
Has it always been the case, or is this like a newfound thing?
No, I've kind of always liked my root beer, but I'm drinking some A&W today, and it's a little too sweet for me. Actually, I definitely like root beer, but this certain bottle is
What's the
real
appeal
sweet.
of what's the appeal of root beer? As someone who's maybe never tasted root beer in over 15 years, maybe. The only soda like pop that I drink is if there's like club soda or something mixed into, an alcoholic beverage. That's the closest I get to drinking pop is in like a cocktail. So
yeah, that's fair. I don't know, dude. The appeal. Why would I ever drink root beer? It tastes good to me most of the time.
That's all you got.
It's a little softer than
That's all you got. I'm asking you to sell root beer to me, and you just said it tastes good to me. You can't give me anything more.
I'm here to sell Ram Jommer. I'm not here to sell root beer.
That's fair enough. So shall we start selling Ram Jommer?
Oh, yes, indeed.
So the thing about Race to Crashpoint Tower is that these middle grade reader books are just a nice little change of pace if you're reading everything. You could read this in a sit down. Like this took me, and it takes an hour and a half to read this book. Essentially, it doesn't take very long. So essentially, what happens here is you're introduced to Ram Jamaram, a young Jedi Padawan who loves to spend his time in the garage. He loves to spend his time as a mechanic. He works with his hands. He sees the Force in that way a lot of times, and he is not very sure of himself. Some Padawans, you may think, oh, he's a Padawan. Of course, he's not sure of himself. But there's plenty of Padawans, and we've seen in Star Wars that are very confident, if not too confident. And he's on the opposite side of, that pendulum. It swings back the other way to where he looks up to some of these other Jedi and Padawans that he meets in this book and is like, oh my goodness, you're accomplishing this, or you're this confident, like Lula, for instance. And this is a book about him finding within himself the confidence to do what he needs to do, that he can be sure of himself as both a Jedi Padawan and a Jedi Knight in the future, and gets the courage to take a step out of the cushy life that he has gotten comfortable with on Valo, to step into, other roles that a Jedi might have. He's going to go explore the galaxy with them and fight on the frontier with them moving forward, with Lula, Zine, and Court Farzla, like the other members of the Padawan group that we discussed in Young Jedi Adventures, or High Republic Adventures. High Republic Adventures.
Lots of adventures going on here.
Lots of adventures going on. And so this is really just a story about Ram. There's other characters that are mixed in, but this is really about Ram's journey inside of himself, mixing in some of Lula finding her balance as a Padawan and learning about attachments and how the Jedi are supposed to be, about how they care for people around them. So this is a book about, obviously, the Nihil are attacking Lanisa City for the Valo Fair, and it's about how they do their part to restore communication so that the Jedi can and the Republic can end up salvaging the day and saving lives in the end. So you don't need to do like a whole, this is every single point that happens across the book, because this is just, this is the middle grade novel. We've already talked about the story, and how it affects the macro of the High Republic, like the large scale High Republic. But let's get into some of the little characters and moments. We have to start with Ram Jamaram. What draws you to Ram as this? Honestly, he's just this unassuming Padawan. Like, most people don't even view him as a Padawan when they see him at first, because he's always got the grease-stained robes and the offbeat personality. But you mentioned before, just a few minutes ago, that you would love to be Ram's master if you were ever a Jedi. So why Ram?
Well, a lot of his tendencies I've seen in myself. I feel like I've been a much more reserved person, especially when I was his age, younger. And I just wanted to kind of seclude myself, do my own little thing. I was probably pretty strange as a kid. I was a little weird guy. I might still be. But
of course,
I think I'd
You're
love
doing
to
a
be
podcast that's about, the High Republic race to Crashpoint Tower middle grade book. I'd say it's safe to say we're both a little oddballs,
and wouldn't change it any other way,
Proud
so I
of
feel like I could really help him along. Like, I've been on that same track of a journey, personality wise, and so I'd love to help bring him into his own, gain some more confidence and gain some more desire to go out into the galaxy and use your powers that you've been gifted from the Force to do good and change the world, change the universe for good. I'd love to help him along that journey, and that is what his journey ultimately is in this book, is really learning that it's okay to want to go out, and it's okay to it's good, it's almost encouraged to really like go seek the problems and the frontier, and like go find where you can help out there. You don't have to spend your whole life in your garage.
It's a story that hits home every time I read it, from the standpoint of like Ram's character trope of the guy that thinks he's going to grow up, live his life one way in this, where he's comfortable. And not that Lonisa City is a small town, but a smaller temple with not a lot of Jedi around in this outpost in, further away from Coruscant, closer to the frontier. And rather than that be fulfilled, something is going to happen that completely shifts his worldview, or I guess in Star Wars instance, his galactic view, and
Yeah.
propels him on a bigger journey, a greater journey. And we're going to see that journey play out over the next several, stories in the High Republic. But for me, what I really loved about Ram's character is that each part of the story, he starts off and he's in awe of his master, Master Sai. He's in awe of what's his master Sai, right? Is his master.
That's a good. Let's take a moment here to say that Tyler actually reread the book.
And I still can't remember
I read it
who his master
last
is.
year, and I did a lot of
Kumpar, Master Kumpar.
There we go, Master Kumpar.
Okay, Master Kumpar. Master Sai would be Lula on the other side.
Yes, there we go.
Sorry.
Yeah.
These
Cantum
things get
Sai.
mixed up sometimes. Cantum Sai and Master Kumpar. So it starts off where he's in awe of him. The story kind of goes along, and then he's in awe of Ty York and everything that she's able to do, and she's not even a Jedi. And then he's somewhat in awe of Lula when Lula helps him, takes him off to Crashpoint Tower to try to restore communications. And he watches her as she, does certain things with the Force, or just confidently stands up to people, takes on the Nile, takes on 6 Nile ships at once. And ultimately, the story is going to end with him being able to become the first Jedi to ever negotiate some sort of a temporary alliance with the Tringir in order to take down the Nile surrounding them. And then he's able to fix the tower, which ultimately allows all the Jedi and Republic officials on the ground to coordinate a counterattack against the Nile. And he finds himself that confidence. And I love that not that they are anyway the same character, but there's a little level of this mirroring how I view Rey's journey in The Last Jedi, where she's looking for everyone else to help save the galaxy in this moment, where not that he's looking to everyone else to save it, but he's in awe of everyone else and is still not sure of himself. Like, simply to Rey looks to Luke, and she's like, Luke has to be the one to come and save the galaxy. He's the hero that we need. That doesn't really work out for her, so she goes over to Ben, to Kylo, and she's like, Ben Solo, that's the one we need. If he were to turn, that will turn the tide. That will change the tide. This is how we win, And ultimately, that doesn't work out for her either. And when she's faced with the rocks in front of, the cave that the resistance trying to get out, and in that moment, she realized that I am the hero that the galaxy needs. That's what the Force has been trying to show her. Ram has a much tamer story arc, obviously, here, where it's more of all these people are capable of doing these great things. They're so brave. They're so powerful in the Force. And he's just like, I'm not even sure I can go out there and do what I need to do. But he does it. He excels at it. He finds that balance with himself. He remembers his training, his teachings, and is the unsung hero of the Battle of the Republic Fair. And so that's what draws me into Ram John Ram, is because he is that unassuming, not the natural born leader that maybe some of the other Jedi are. He's not the first round draft pick of, Jedi or citizens looking to draft the best Jedi squad. But in no way is that diminish his capabilities or his demeanor after this book is over.
Absolutely. You made a really good comparison there to Rey Skywalker. And the first person in my mind, I was also drawing a little comparison here, is someone we've talked about on this show. Reith Silas is maybe a lot similar to that. He kind of wanted to be a little bit reclusive, doesn't want to leave his library. He wants to stay in his niche and not go out.
So true.
And that is why we have a book coming up that pairs those two together, and there's a really good story there. So yeah, I like the trope. I like that you can bring it back to even the Skywalker saga. That's my favorite thing about the High Republic, right? It makes that Skywalker saga even stronger.
Anyone who says it doesn't understand what's happening here.
And we've heard a few people that say that, so we push back against that.
Let's just be honest. Just keeping it real. So, Midnight Horizon coming up. I love Midnight Horizon.
Yes,
some people, I cannot believe the number of people that like to
There's a lot of people that don't like it. Yeah,
and
I'm
I'm
really
excited
positive
to
on it.
I'm excited to reread it. I'm excited to reread it
Yes.
because next week will not be one that I am excited to reread, as I'll probably start rereading Out of the Shadows tonight, and the goal is to finish it by Wednesday so I can have a 3-day break before we record the podcast for it. It's my least favorite
That's
High
fair.
Republic book, I think. But it's a Vernestra Rose story, so I'll find it within myself to gain some strength.
And
Speaking of
even
Vernestra
Vernestra
Rowe,
Rose, yeah, I was gonna say.
so yeah, speaking of Vernestra Rowe, let me put on my captain, my president of the
Yeah, there
fan
we
club
go.
hat real quick. And she plays a pivotal role in this book while only being in for a couple of chapters because she inspires Lula to find that balance within herself. She's able to connect with Lula. She's able to talk to her about Jedi aren't told not to love people. They are not told not to care deeply about people. It's whenever those things can create that imbalance within us so we can't focus on what needs to be done. So there was this great part in the book, and I love this part of the book, Luke, where Lula just breaks down because she sees Vernestra, who's not much older than her. And Vernestra, or they're close, pretty much the same age, really.
They're
Like
pretty
they're
close.
like the same age. And Vernestra's a full blown Jedi Knight, and she's still a Padawan, and she's wondering how. And, Vernestra has to deal with that a lot. And Lula just feels like she's such a mess. She goes, we're not supposed to have attachments, but everywhere I go, I form attachments. I've only known Zim for a little while, and I can't imagine, her dying, or if Master Sai were to die, like we have to go save them. And Vernestra they were talking about attachments, and she basically says to Lula, if saving Master Sai and Zine meant that they would live, but you would never see them again, would you even hesitate to go save them? And she said, well, not seeing them again would be heartbreaking, but there's no way I wouldn't go and save them. And Vernestra said, like, if you had someone that was your adversary that was about to die, would you save them? And she jokes that as long as they're not shooting at me, then yes, I would save them. And Vernestra says, I almost get like, there is the lesson. That's you're not saving these people. You're not going after them out of a sense of attachment. You're going out to protect life, to protect light. Like that's what makes Jedi the heroes, is that they love above all else. And just because there's fear and there is being scared of loss, and that emotion can be heightened, does not in any way mean that the Jedi are supposed to, become recluse in that matter. And I thought that was just a great teaching moment between Vernestra and Lula being able to learn that from someone that, yes, is a higher ranking Jedi than them, but is closer to being their peer just because of the age. I thought was a really powerful moment in the book for her, in what we're going to see for her moving forward as well.
Yeah, that's huge. I feel like the High Republic has done a really good job hitting on this attachment problem
Mm-hmm.
or just this concept that exists in the Jedi Order, where we famously see it in the prequel trilogy where it goes wrong. Anakin loses his way due to
Of course.
attachments. And I have really liked the kind of breakdown and study and redemption of having attachments in the High Republic, where we see even
Mm-hmm.
Elzar Mann and Var Chris are able to figure it out. And we see that Lula and
Fingers
Zine,
crossed.
fingers crossed, we don't know how that ends yet. Okay. Um, but Lula and Zine, even they have to struggle with this and try to figure this out. It's not easy. It's not
Mm-hmm.
even easy for us in the real world, but for them being Jedi with extra layers of codes and rules,
Mm-hmm.
I love that Vernestra is so smart at her age of like, she's like 16 in this book, and she already knows, like, can
What
cut through
happened to
to
her?
the like, what
Makes you wonder what happened to her.
makes you wonder what happened to her. I wonder how she's going to be at 116 years old. Huh. She'll probably be great. She'll probably be fine. But she is able to really just like get through to the like nitty gritty. Like, I can see the lesson. Let me impart this to Lula. And I think her ability to do that is why you're such a big fan of her. I think that's why
Mhm.
I love her so much, is that she has so much knowledge and ability to really get through to the most important things at such a young age and pass that on.
Mhm.
That's so important.
Mhm.
She's great for Imri, in that regard
Mhm.
too.
There's a certain level that Vernestra, she's not a very, I don't want to say, saying she's not a very emotional character is not accurate because she's a deep feeler, but in terms of the expression of those emotions, she's not a big expresser.
Yeah,
So that's where I differ extremely, like, very much from Vernestra. You know how I feel most of the time.
I
And I
do.
do not
Yeah.
necessarily suppress excitement or, those things. I'm very
Or
good at
sorrow.
suppressing, maybe, yes, or sorrow. There at school, that's very different as a teacher, but in terms of, the general sense, no. But Vernestra can be come across as a little stoic at times,
Mhm.
and so, but she's a very deep feeler. We know this based on her interactions with Avon, her interactions with Imri, how she even has this conversation with Lula. So I love that her part, albeit small, plays great dividends for these characters that we're going to be following later on, because Lula's able to share some of this with Ram, and Ram's able to grow. Uh, in retrospect. So Lula herself finds that balance, and finding that balance is what helps her take on 6 Nile speeder cruise ships at once in the fight. And I will say that there was this moment when they were facing off with some of the like monsters like Mudhorns and other things in the Republic Fair. You know how crazy of like a video game that would be if you're
Ooh.
on like a planet as a Jedi or someone, and there's this an actual like the zoo that's there, and all these creatures from Star Wars just go crazy, and you're having to get out, and there's the fog because the Nile dropped their cloud of
The
gas over the
cloud.
cities so they can't see, and so you're not even able to see around corners, and there's just monsters everywhere. It would just be terrifying.
A little touch of that is Jedi Fallen Order when you get stolen by that group who is
Oh
like
yeah, yeah.
with Grease or against Grease, and like you have to
Mhm.
face this like zoo of animals. It makes me think of that. But
That was
this
so
would be
wild. It's like
different.
the random subplot where you're dropped in and have to fight these monsters.
Yeah.
Took me
But I
so
can
long to beat that
I can kind of
stupid
see it.
piece of crap.
No, yeah, that's not something I look forward to be playing. Let's call it that way. But I think putting me on Valo during the attack, that's fun. Get me through that,
Mhm.
war cloud. I'll face a rag
Right.
scythe.
What the rag side? 3 heads, these giant tongues and things that come out with the claws. Like, no, that's too
Give me
much.
one.
That's too much. Give me one. Power up the suit. Let's get ready to rumble. Okay, so those are really the main characters of this. Obviously, Zine is here. We don't get to explore her character that much until the very end, and then a little bit at the beginning. She's obviously dealing with a lot of the fallout of her friend Crix joining the Nile. She then finds out that he was trying to get a hold of her, and she really wasn't able to correspond. There's a lot going on there. She's having to deal with the trauma of her homeland really not wanting her around anymore. They're blaming the Jedi, not the Nile, for the attack on her home. And she is kind of a wanderer at this point. And she's found this, temporary home amongst the Jedi, the people that she has grown up being told to hate, being told to fear, being told to loathe. They are her enemy, not her friends. And yet she believes that these are the best group of friends that she's ever made. We know what's going to happen with her and Lula down the line. So her arc in this isn't really explored. Like, she didn't really have a character arc here, because we're going to explore that a little bit more in the comics. But I did at least enjoy that for those reading everything, you get a little update in this book of where she's at. And it's not necessarily a good place emotionally, but she's surrounded by people and she's in an environment that's going to it gives you the impression that, you know what, she's hopefully going to be okay.
Exactly. I've got a big heart for Zine. She's so cool, and she's got this really interesting story where she is force sensitive. She grew up in a force hating
Mhm.
cult, And we've talked a lot about this in the previous episode where we broke down High Republic Adventures 1 through 5. But
Right.
yeah, she's a really cool. I don't want to call it foil. That's not the right thing, but just like a pairing for Lula. They're so different. They're so different, and yet
They strengthen each other.
yes, absolutely. They're so good for each other because they've got just the most opposite backgrounds,
Mhm.
which I think is just super interesting. So I love
Lula
that.
is
I think Daniel Jose
the
Older loves
confident.
writing them actually
Mhm.
too.
Oh, I mean, he's basically authored that entire story for the two of them.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but the thing about Zine, which I love, you have Lula, who's the more quiet, firm, strong Padawan, and Zine is she's a movie star. You know, she has a charismatic personality about herself that people, when they meet her, they don't necessarily she doesn't necessarily let them in super fast, but they feel like drawn. Like she has that magnetic personality, the charisma that draws you in, that pulls you in, where you want this person to like you. You really want to impress them, and you're in awe of what they're able to do. It's like, how are you so good at every single thing? That's kind of how Zine is. And but classically, the characters so much like that are she's dealing with so much inner doubt and self, insecurity problems. And I love the fact that you also have Lula, who's dealing with the same thing, but projects strength throughout all of that as well. So
Yeah.
those are that. We get some Ty York in this, like the last character that we really hang out with. We get some Ty York. I thought that it was interesting how Daniel Jose Older wrote Ty York, because obviously Kevin introduces us to Ty, and it's a very firm. She's hard personality, tough, and in this we kind of see a little bit more of her playful side.
Yeah, exactly. She's a little bit I don't know if softer is the right term, but she's
Mhm.
more palatable. She's a little bit more likable, I guess, in this
Mhm.
story because it is aimed toward kids. But she also I think that is pretty believable for her character that like she's able to really connect with Ram. She knows
Mhm.
we're both Jedi, we're both Force users, we're both in jail, we're both detained. Let's work together. Like we've got
Whoa,
more
whoa,
in
whoa,
common.
whoa, 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 whoa. Just don't say we're both Jedi. She would be upset if you said that to her right now.
Right now, yes, she would. She probably would be even current day in her story, but in my book, she is. I don't care what
Right,
she
right,
says.
right.
She uses the force for good. So I call her one, even though she would not say that.
Fair enough. Fair enough. But no, it was nice to see that relationship between her and Ram, and just a
Yeah.
little bit of their back and forth, some of their banter was nice, because Ty, it does give up. It reminds you a little bit of what you think is there when you read Monster Temple Peak, and how she interacts with, is it Draven or something? Like the young kid, not Draven.
Druin.
Druin. Yes, when she interacts with Druin. You're so good at the names. So when she interacts with Druin in that comic, you kind of see that there's a little bit more that she wants to maybe give, in terms of like a, not a nurturing character, but like almost like the fun older sister vibes that you might get from
Yeah.
someone, or like
Oh
the fun
yeah.
aunt. That's
Fun
kind of
ants.
the
The
vibes
wine
that,
ant.
yeah, this like the fun side that she gives off. Maybe there's some moments in this book where she winks at Ram when something goes right, or when she hops off. They're flying on the flying dragon beasts, and she just hops off,
Sandals.
and sandals, yes, and it just says, "Yep, yep, here you go. We're doing this. Have fun. I'll see you later. I'm gonna go fight over here now." And it's refreshing to see multiple sides of her character, because I think Cavan writes the other side so well, and Daniel Jose Older's style is a much more lighthearted kind of humor, is a little bit more
Yeah.
humor, a little funnier, a little bit more just wacky even at times.
Yeah. And I like that addition to Ty's character because she's certainly like a really cool hard edge kind of person in the Rising
Mhm.
Storm. Even in Monster at Temple Peak, she's like that. So I really enjoyed having a softer, more personable, relatable side to her in this story, and I
Mhm.
liked that seeing her. You hit on this. Seeing her interact with Ram made me go, okay, yeah, she has
Mhm.
that. side to her where she can be like someone's master. She can teach. She has that. So Druin just has to find a way to lock in and really get that out of her too.
So as usual, I got the book with me, and I'll read something
It's my
that I
favorite part.
really want to. So I don't even need to read this. I can memorize this part, but this is essentially the lesson that is just thrown in here over and over and over. And it is what Daniel José Older, if you leave this book with nothing else, this is what he wants you to leave with. And it's remember the whole for the whole and each part for the role that it plays. He says this over and over in this book, and that is the lesson that Ram is learning throughout. And he finally realizes it fully at the end, and it helps him to save the day. But it's something that he's telling himself throughout the book at different times, and he's trying to channel that lesson, and he's able to at the end. But I think it's so poignant for a middle grade book because remember the whole for the whole, each part for the role it plays. Remember what the big picture is. It's so easy to get caught up in the day-to-day struggles of life, or if you are riding high one day, to have a little thing happen and to kind of go down that roller coaster or chase down this rabbit hole over here. And it's so easy to get distracted like that and not remember the why for what you are doing in your day-to-day life, in your weekly life, monthly, yearly. Like it's so easy to get distracted by that. But Ram's whole lesson is remember the whole for the whole. He is a Jedi first. He has to remember he cannot necessarily go charge over here and do that and save these people over here right now. He has to take care of the big task, which is, securing Crashpoint Tower and fixing it, because that will make sure that everything else can come into play. Each part for the role that it plays. His part in this is to serve the whole, which is making sure Valo is secure, and he has to make sure he fulfills his part. Every one of us can learn from that, and middle grade readers that are reading this, middle school students, upper elementary students reading this book, is something that's so easy for them to apply to their own daily lives, because middle school, high school, elementary school is the definition of letting little things that are ultimately trivial down the line affect you on a day-to-day basis and letting it ruin other aspects and changing and warping your thinking of how something operates. And so I love that was the message that Daniel José Older wanted everyone to leave with, which is to make sure, despite all of those things, not that they're not important, but do not let it affect you from the standpoint of you miss the big picture.
That is very well put. I like that he applies this kind of concept to even writing the High Republic Adventures, which is like his main thing he's done for all of the High Republic Publishing Initiative. He has, especially in Phase 1 and 3, with these characters that we know, the whole for the whole, each part for the role it plays. I feel like that applies to each character with Court and Zint and Farzala, Lula, Zine, even Ram. Each of these characters, like, they all have very different personalities, but he weaves them all together. They all come together for a common goal. And if he splits them off, he splits off two interesting people to work together, and they change each other. And the way that he's able to really just construct his comic series embodies this lesson, where he has all these characters and these kids that are very different, and they all come together for this this whole that is wonderful, that they all work together very well, and each character has their own very distinct arc and story going on, and so he's able to make a tapestry and weave all this together pretty well. So he's great. DJO is a hero of mine. I like his work.
I love that. So that is it for this week's High Republic episode, which is where we're at right now in the Timeline show. So Timeline 44, Race to Crashpoint Tower. Next week, Timeline show 45, we'll be talking about Out of the Shadows, Justina Ireland book. Love Justina Ireland. This is probably my least favorite Justina Ireland book, but you know what? The purpose of the show is not to come on next week and talk about how much we don't like Out of the Shadows. That's
not
just
at all.
it's not my favorite book. I'll be up front on that when we talk about it. But we're gonna find some fun things to talk about, some things that we'd like to celebrate, because that's what we do for for Star Wars. So I'll begin. I will reread that because that's the journey that I've taken upon myself, is to read all of these before we talk about them. So I'll be doing that this week. I'll try to get ahead. Now the basketball's over, I might have a little more time to read a little bit ahead. But
Yeah, there we
make
go.
sure you are checking out the Timeline show. If you missed an episode, you can go back, or if you're reading some books, we have covered everything from phase 2 of the High Republic if you're going timeline order. And right now we're in the middle of phase 1 of the High Republic. So you can go back, check out what we've done before, listen to some book reviews that we've done, just little chats about a little animated show called Young Jedi Adventures. We're here to cover everything in the Star Wars timeline. Be looking out for my chat with my friend Paul for our Star Wars month in review episode, which goes all over the place. I'll just say that we're going all over the place. We have a good time. It's kind of what we do. We just chat about everything going on in Star Wars for the last month. And if you've been following Star Wars for the last couple of weeks, you know that it's been a wild ride. So looking for that next week. Star Wars Newsnet Live. We're going to have a great time talking about something in the Star Wars universe. Have no idea. Did not know we were going to be talking about Kathleen Kennedy exiting Lucasfilm as president here by the end of the year. So didn't know we were going to talk about that last week, but here we are. So everyone, appreciate it. See you next time. Luke, my friend, for the light and life, brother. Remember, we are all the Republic.